Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Define Disaster. This is Battlefield 4, and today we're going to be trying to figure out which assault rifle is best for long-distance combat. Long-distance combat is usually ruled by the sniper class with their bolt-action rifles. There are, of course, the DMRs that you can pick up as well, but otherwise your options are relatively limited. There are, of course, some assault rifles and some guns in general that have range potential, and we are here today to figure out which of the assault rifles is best at that long encounter combat. Now, there are a multitude of guns with suitable capabilities for long distance, and there's a lot of guns which are specialized at everything, so to say. So they're all-rounding guns and perform well at both medium, close, and long combat distances. But today we're going to be focusing on three guns which really excel at the extremely long distances. Before we, however, get started with the three guns we're going to be talking about today, I wanted to briefly explain why the SCAR H is not amongst them. It basically comes down to the extremely high vertical recoil that you have on a SCAR H. At 0.5 degrees, it's actually one of the highest in the game, and even if you put on an angle grip or a muzzle brake, it still is too much for long distance combat. This gun excels extremely well at medium distance combat because of its high damage model, but long distance combat is just simply not effective with this gun, or as effective as the other guns we're going to be talking about today, because of this high vertical recoil. The first gun we're going to be talking about today is the AR-160. It comes with a standard assault rifle damage model, as all guns do today, starting at 24.5 damage and ending at 18 damage, that is at 60 meters, with the drop-off starting at 12.5 meters. The rate of fire of the AR-160 is the highest in our comparison today. At 700 rounds per minute, it is actually quite competitive and very much capable also at medium and close range combat. The magazine size of the AR-160 sits at 30+1, the standard assault rifle magazine size, and the muzzle velocity is similar to its competition at 650 meters per second. When it comes to reload time, you have a relatively competitive reload time of 2 seconds with one or more bullets left, and a very long reload time of 3 seconds with no bullets left in the chamber. It should be said, however, that the reload time of the AR-160 is better than both of its competitors, both for the short and for the long reload. The recoil pattern of this gun is relatively easy to remember, with 0.23 degrees to the left, 0.23 degrees to the right, and 0.23 degrees vertically. This is, however, one of the highest recoils we will be talking about today. Even though 0.23 is, of course, very little recoil to control, be that vertical or horizontal, it is higher than both the AN-94 and SAR-21 when it comes to horizontal recoil, and higher than the SAR-21 when it comes to vertical recoil. Where this gun can shine is when it comes to the first shot multiplier. At 1.6, this is extremely low, so it's definitely not recommended to put a angle grip on this gun, and extremely useful for when trying to tap fire at longer range. Coming now to the accuracy of the AR-160. At 0.2, this is very good and standard for most assault rifles. When it comes to hip firing while moving, however, this gun isn't as good as the competition we're looking at today. At 3.5, it isn't quite as accurate as the 3.25 of the SAR-21. Moving on then to the next gun in our list, the AN-94. As mentioned earlier, this shares the same 24.5 18 damage model with the same damage drop start and same damage drop end. However, the rate of fire on this gun is, of course, something interesting. At 600, if in full auto mode, this is significantly slower than the AR-160, but of course the mode you should be using the AN-94 in is its tap fire mode, where you can reach a fire rate, at least of the 2 shots you shoot out at the same time, of 1,200. Once more, we have a magazine size here of 30+1 or 31, and a slightly slower, yet not significantly slower, muzzle velocity of 620 meters per second. When it comes to reload times, you have a 3.5 second empty reload and 2.4 with still a bullet or more in the chamber. Of course, this is nowhere close to as competitive as the AR-160. However, still good enough for most situations, given that we're talking about a long distance assault rifle. When it comes to recoil, we have a vertical recoil, the highest in its category today, of 0.32 degrees, and a recoil left and right of 0.1 and 0.12 respectively, meaning this gun has practically absolutely no horizontal recoil, which is of course fantastic for hitting those targets at longer range. The first shot multiplier on this gun is higher than the AR-160, however still not game breaking and definitely to be controlled with the help of a angled foregrip at 2.1 degrees, or multiplier I should say. When it comes to the accuracy of the gun, we have a standard 0.2 ADS while not moving, and as the AR-160 we have a rather miserable 3.5 accuracy for when moving and hip firing at the same time. Coming then to the last gun on our list, the SAR-21. Once more we have the same damage model as with the previous two guns, and we have a fire rate here of 600 rounds per minute versus the 1200 in tap fire modus of the AN-94 and of course the 700 of the AR-160. A muzzle velocity of 650 meters, identical to the AR-160 and slightly faster than the AN-94. And a reload time of 2.3 seconds with 1 bullet or more in the chamber, and 3.4 seconds with no bullets left. This is once more slower than the AR-160, however, with the exception of close quarter situations, relatively irrelevant. The recoil of the SAR-21 is extremely low and easy to control, with 0.18 vertical and 0.145 both left and right, equally of course. This gun is not only ideal for long distance combat when it comes to its recoil pattern, but also basically better than both the AN-94 and the AR-160, although it doesn't have the lowest recoil left and right. Those 0.03 are not good, 0.03, excuse me, are not going to make a big difference, while as the large difference in vertical recoil, almost half of that of the AN-94, is going to make a significant difference. The first shot recoil multiplier of the SAR-21 is right in between the AR-160 and AN-94 at a reasonably low 1.8 degrees, and nothing you will have to worry about. With the ADS being at 0.25, it is actually less accurate than its competitors, however only slightly, and I can tell you out of personal experience, this has never come to serve me at a disadvantage, especially when considering you have an easier to control recoil pattern and are actually going to be more accurate with your shots when firing. The hip fire on this gun is relatively bad when comparing to something like a PDW, but relatively good for assault rifles and better than the competition, as already mentioned, at 3.25. Well, so what does it all mean in the end? Which is the best gun? And I guess you would have to say, in what situation? This is a really difficult choice to make, and it of course depends on your playstyle and what you expect from your gun. In my personal experience, I would definitely favor the AR-160, and the reason for it are as follows. All of these guns are extremely accurate, and I like to play them, with the exception of the AN-94, with a heavy barrel and vertical grip, giving me a little bit more accuracy while moving, because these guns don't need any assistance when it comes to the recoil department. The AN-94, of course, uses a angled foregrip simply because you are only tap firing this gun. There is no other way to play it really effectively, and therefore the angle foregrip is of great benefit. But my personal preference is the AR-160 because of its full auto capabilities. I find it slightly more difficult to always tap fire at a moving target, and your target isn't always stationary. At a stationary target, the AN-94 is the best gun, no discussions. It's extremely accurate, it has a very high fire rate, and it's extremely precise with its shot. However, as soon as your target moves, in my case, I find it very difficult to still shoot accurately with the AN-94. If you don't face that difficulty, then the AN-94 is the best choice. So why the AR-160 then over the SAR-21 if you are somebody who very much prefers the full auto capabilities of a gun? Well, it's a matter of fire rate in this opinion. Yes, the recoil is slightly higher with the AR-160, but I haven't really noticed that in my playstyle, and I find that I am at a significant disadvantage when playing close quarter with the SAR-21, whereas with the AR-160, because of its accuracy, I am equal to somebody who has an AK say over 20 meters because my shots are usually more accurate than somebody who's spraying downrange with one of those weapons. The SAR-21 does excel at long distance combat and statistically should be better than the AR-160, having just less recoil and therefore being easier to control, but in my experience isn't the case because of course the targets are either moving or they are relatively similar, and you have of course a higher fire rate with the AR-160, which means also at range you can drop people faster. A main problem with trying to decide on a long distance weapon and which is the best is that you can never stay long distance, and you're going to see this in this gameplay today. There is a lot of close quarter combat, even though I played trying to stay at long distances. You can't move on to an objective if you're always hiding somewhere back in the bushes. And this is where the SAR-21 benefits from its hip fire, but that isn't enough to make up for its relatively low fire rate. And I have lost many a firefight, even though I had the jump on my enemy, because they were using something like an AWS, AEK, or even an ACE or M16. They just have such a much higher fire rate that they will win that firefight. So that's my conclusion. Personal preference, AR-160. Then it's really a tie-up between the SAR-21 and A94. It depends on whether or not I'm going to be facing a lot of moving targets or a lot of camping, stationary, sniper, campers, any of those kind of players, if you will. So I hope you very much enjoyed this weapon review or weapon comparison. I hope you found it useful. If you disagree with my verdict, or if I've somehow mixed up my stats and numbers, feel free to comment down below. If you have questions about loadouts or suggestions for videos, feel free to do that down below as well. But otherwise, I hope to see you in the next Battlefield 4 video.